So hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video today I will be going through my top 10 records. Choosing your best records is always very hard since it's very dependent on your mood and what you want to hear, but I thought I'd choose 10 records that I very often come back to, and when I'm in a specific mood, those are the records that I most often grab. These will be in no particular order, since again it's hard to rank your favorite albums, and the rankings would probably differ from day to day. If I did this tomorrow, maybe some other records would be present in this list, but this is the list that I came up with today. One record per artist, because otherwise it would have gotten even harder. I also decided to choose records from some different genres to get a nice mix of records within this list. But let's get started with the first record, and that is Abbey Road by the Beatles. I know in my last video I said that the White Album is my favorite, but I think that Abbey Road just edges it. It's more complete and holds together better as an album, and there's just so many good songs, and there's not a bad moment at this record, in my opinion, which I'm not sure I'm able to say about the White Album. But this was released in 1969 on their own Apple label, and this was not their last album, but the last album they recorded, so I guess we can say this is their last album, and I do think this is a much better album than Let It Be, but that's not too shabby either. But this is the first record on my top 10 list. Next up we got Odyssey and Oracle, and in my opinion this is the ultimate pop psych album, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree. It was released in '68, and I did talk a bit about this in my last video, so I won't go too much into it, but this was sort of their final effort at making it, and I'm not really sure it worked out too well. Did get some fame later on because of their single Time of the Season, but today is regarded as maybe the best pop psych album of all time. Maybe by some the best psych album, but not in my opinion, but it still holds a place on my top 10. This is a reissue released on Big Beat. I really like the artwork on this. It's the front, and you can see the back also. And the funny thing about this cover is actually that Odyssey is misspelled. It's supposed to end in just SSY, but here it's spelled SSEY. They didn't get to change it for the pressing, so ever since 1968 it's been named Odyssey and Oracle, misspelled. Next up is Pearl by Janis Joplin. This is my favorite Janis record, hence it being on the list. This was released in 1971, I believe only 4 months after her death. So her first 2 records, I believe, was featuring Big Brother and the Holding Company as the backing band. But on this, it's the Full Tilt Boogie, I believe. Yep, the Full Tilt Boogie, as you can see here on the back of the cover. This is a very solid record. My 2 favorite songs on this is probably A Woman Left Lonely and Trust Me. Trust Me is my all-time favorite Janis song, so if you haven't heard that, definitely check it out. But this was released on the CBS label. Next up we got some Dylan. I mentioned briefly in my last video that this was my favorite record, and that is of course Blonde on Blonde, released in 1966. And I just think this does not sound like 1966. This sounds way later and really before its time. This is a double LP, so we got 2 LPs here, released on the CBS label. I just need to show you the gatefold of this. So the outer gatefold, I guess. We got Bob Dylan standing there with his hands in his pockets, looking, I don't really know what kind of mood he's in, but there's the inside of the gatefold as well, with some nice pictures. But such a good record, and like to talk about my favorite songs on this album will be hard because there's just so many. But I Want You, Sad Eye Lady of the Lowland, Fourth Time Round. Yeah, there's just too many. Let's just look at some of these. So we got Visions of Johanna. That's a great one. One of Us Must Know. As I said, just too many great songs to pick out some clear favorites. Next up, we got Nico, Chelsea Girl. This is a reissue released on Back to Black. Great sounding reissue. I have no issues with it. And this is a very like folky album. It does have sort of some, not psychedelic, but some dark tendencies, which would be more prominent in a later career. But there are also some like really sweet songs like These Days, The Fairest of the Seasons, Little Sister, Somewhere There's a Feather, I'll Keep With Mine. There's so many good songs. Those are sort of more light-hearted songs. But there's also some darker songs like Wrap Your Troubles in Dreams, Chelsea Girls, and those songs really remind me of What's to Come by Nico. And I believe she has said that she's not too fond of this record. Maybe it was like too produced and too sort of made up, or too much makeup on the songs and not enough soul. I don't really know, but for me this is definitely in my top 10 and it's a very good record. Next up is Pink Floyd, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Again, I mentioned this in my last video, my favorite Pink Floyd record, but that also depends since this is very different from their later works. So it all depends on which mood I'm in, but I think I'll have to say this is my favorite Floyd record. This was released in '67, and I believe it was recorded at the same time as Sgt. Pepper's. So many good songs on this one. The long Interstellar Overdrive, which is just like a massive psychedelic jam, amazing. We got some more light-hearted songs like The Gnome, Bike, which starts off really kind of funny, and sort of as the song progresses it delves more and more into madness, which I guess sort of encapsulates Syd Barrett's persona. But yeah, this is a mono copy, a mono re-release or a reissue, but a very good one, so I highly recommend it if you haven't listened to it. Going into my favorite band, which is Jefferson Airplane, and I had a really hard time choosing one Airplane record, but I landed on Volunteers, released in '69. I think this is such a good album, and I've heard a lot of like live Airplane, and a lot of these songs are really good live as well. This was released on RCA Victor. I believe this is a reissue, like a early reissue. I'm not 100% sure on the year, but on this record my favorite song is easily Eskimo Blues, I believe, or Eskimo Blue Day. I don't even know the name of my favorite songs, but Eskimo Blue Day is definitely my favorite song on this record. I also like We Can Be Together, Good Shepherd, The Farm, Wooden Ships, Volunteers. And again, these are all my favorite records, so of course I'm gonna like a lot of the songs on these albums. But if you haven't listened to this yet, because this comes a bit later on in their career, definitely check this one out, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. A nice cover, and it got some nice text here. So this is how they appeared at a festival. On the back here we got some small interviews, like a question to all of the band members. So what is your favorite stripe on a flag? And yeah, they got some funny answers, so definitely read the back while listening to this record, and I'm sure you enjoy it. Next up is the incredible string band The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter. It was released in '68, and this is such a good record. I picked it up at a record fair. I had heard about the Incredible String Band before, seen it on some playlists, but I never really listened to them. But I just picked this up because it was pretty cheap, and I fell in love with it. I listened to like this record for the whole day, and it was just mind-blowing. All the different instruments used on here, and it's like small melodies within the songs, just made me fall in love with it. My favorite songs on this album is probably Mercy I Cry City. Like the melodies on that one, is just gets stuck in your head forever. I got them spinning in my head right now. As well as a very cellular song, which is a very long song. It's almost 13 minutes, goes through different phases. And I read in a book that it was like compiled like just overnight on like a small keyboard, and then they fledged it out for the album version. But that song also got some sick melodies. So yeah, that is the Hangman's Beautiful Daughter by the Incredible String Band. And I can sort of comment on the name here. I read that the meaning of the Hangman's Beautiful Daughter was like the hangman was sort of all their experiences leading up to this album, and the beautiful daughter is the album. So this album is sort of a result of everything they've experienced put into music, and I think it's a beautiful piece of art. Second to last album is Vashti Bunyan, Just Another Diamond Day. This is one of my favorite artists. I did read this book about her, which is so good. It's probably the best music related book I have read, and it just gave me so much more insight to the songs on this album. This was released in 1970, pretty much unknown at the time. It was produced by Joe Boyd though. He sort of gave her a promise that he would produce it, and he did, and the album sort of went nowhere. Today the originals are stupid expensive, but this is a reissue released on Branch Records on the white vinyl. But Vashti had a pretty interesting story. She sort of was this poor girl that with her boyfriend moved out to the Hebridean Isles. They traveled with horse and carriage, as you can see here. Here's their horse, Bess. Here's their dog, May, or Blue, I'm not really sure. And here's their the carriage that they traveled all over the country in. And this was sort of their house that they lived in when they got there. So she sort of lived the hippie gypsy lifestyle to the full. She continued to live like that for pretty longer than most of the hippies at the time, which the dream sort of fizzled out, but she continued to live like that for some years. And this record sort of got its resurrection in the early 2000s when some people found it and reissued it on the Christina label, I believe it's called. And today she has released 2 more records, which I'm yet to own, but they are also very fantastic. My favorite songs, I'm gonna say my absolute favorite song is Timothy Grub. And again, after reading this book, I sort of got all of her life story, and Timothy Grub is such a beautiful depiction of her journey out to the Hebridean Isles. I also really like Diamond Day, the intro song. That melody just gets stuck in your head. Glowworms, which is sort of a love song. Swallow Song is a beautiful song about the seasons. Rainbow River, just beautiful storytelling within that song. And yeah, Jog Along Bess, just a good song if you're traveling. Listen to that one. But this is Diamond Day, or Just Another Diamond Day by Vashti Bunyan. Now we're into the final record, and this record is by my favorite artist. So it's hard to choose just one album from your favorite artist, but this is probably the one I listen to most, and that is Joni Mitchell's Hejira. This was released in 1976, so pretty late, or probably mid-career. She released a lot of albums before this, but also a lot after, which are all amazing. But this is probably one that I listen to the most. It's released on the Asylum label. So this is sort of a jazzy album. If you're into your Joni, you know she released some albums which are a bit jazzier, most namely probably on her Mingus record, but also on um, The Hissing of Summer Lawns and Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. But this is probably my favorite out of those three and out of all Joni records. You can see the gatefold just got the lyrics printed on them with Joni skating. My favorite song on this is probably Blue Motel Room, which is really laid back, great bass. I believe it's played by Jaco Pastorius. It's actually not, I read here it's played by Chuck Dominico, but Jaco plays on a lot of other songs on this record, so the bass work on this one is just tremendous. So crank up the volume and just listen to the grooves on this one, and Joni's beautiful voice. And her songwriting on this is stunning. I think the best songwriting on this song is probably Song for Sharon, which is like an 8-minute story about Joni and her friend Sharon. So that was my top 10 records. One thing I have to say is that these are the top 10 records in my collection. I don't have all of the records I want, so some records I don't own yet, so I couldn't put them on the list, but I may do a updated version later on when I get some more of the records that I love. But I do want to pose a question for you, to post your favorite record in the comment section below, and maybe a short description of why you love them. And if I haven't checked them out, I will be sure to do so.